Okay, so when I first looked at the text and I read it through, I know this song, and there's also an Israeli translation, a very famous one of this song, which is very folky and nice. And I love the text, but it seemed to me a bit archaic. So I tried to think of a way to refresh it a little bit and to make maybe find a new kind of perspective, or to make it more modern. And then it occurs to me that maybe it might be cool to think of it as almost a lesbian love song, since Anna is a female singer, and I always like to think of the singer as the actual storyteller of the text she's singing about. So I was thinking of that, and I got rid of most of the text and chose only the first bit. And then I tried also to think of a different atmosphere, because I don't see use of saying the same thing that the song already has said, and it's a very classic, great song. So then I thought of, because there's the language and the kind of atmosphere of the song reminded me suddenly the atmosphere of a legend. So I thought of to make it a bit legendary, folky, but the word elf took me to this areas of legendary creatures. So I tried to make it very sweet and dreamy like. And the choice of the harp also came from the desire to preserve something from the Irish folk tradition, but I thought it supported well the concept of the dreamy fairy atmosphere I was trying to create.
So whenever I approach a song, I always make sure that what I can add as a composer to that song is something different to the text. So it's not just a text that can stand alone and it's just with music, it actually has another dimension to it. And I thought what was really interesting about this song was that it had a very sort of happy modal tune, but really the content of it was sad. You know, this protagonist, she dies, and it's kind of about that. So that was the main inspiration for that, trying to add this kind of sadness to this happy song. So kind of when I started, I listened to some Britain who kind of has a lot of juxtapositions with this. So what I did is I kept the main melody of the folk tune, but then I orchestrated it in a very different way to how it usually is. So I used a lot of major sevenths, just because I think it's quite a large interval, and it kind of doesn't really ever resolve. So it kind of has this distant feel to it. And then I also made sure the orchestration was really icy and static sounding. So very high sound, so using piccolo and E-flat clarinet, and putting that really, really high in the register, and very, very quiet. So the players themselves were, struggling when they were doing it, and you could kind of hear this struggle, this real effort just to make a very sort of icy tone. So it was kind of like that. I got a lot of that stuff from Hans Abrahamson, who does that a lot, and I think it's very beautiful but very challenging sounding at the same time. So that was kind of my main inspiration for that.
I saw the text of John Condon. I didn't actually know the folk song before that, but it was really interesting to listen to Anna singing it, and that's actually what inspired a lot of my setting. I wanted to set something that was quite atmospheric but inspired by the darkness of the text. So I chose to set the chunks of the text that I found most evocative in a very fragmented way. So I chose several short lines, and I decided to set them in the text. I decided to write first soprano and double bass together, because I thought that would be a really interesting contrast of a very exactly like the subject matter actually, which is a young boy who dies really young. So I thought it was really suitable to have a soprano voice, like a light soprano voice with a really heavy double bass sound. And I wanted the pulse of the double bass to be present throughout the whole piece. So you have these crotchets that go throughout the whole piece. So it was kind of like, I was thinking of that, you know, kind of like either a heartbeat or, you know, the kind of endless rows of graves that you have and stuff like this. And then the type of colours that I was trying to get was almost like kind of like a memory or trying to remember something. So I wanted a really, really light humming I have sometimes, and so it's quite, I mean, the soprano voice is mostly very quiet on top of the texture. So it's mostly trying to be quite atmospheric, but I was inspired by the kind of textures of like throat singing stuff where you have the kind of the harmonic series, so you have the fundamental and then you have all these harmonics going on above. But so I wanted the double bass and soprano to be very much part of the same sound. And yeah, so the structure of the piece is fragmented in this way. It uses a lot of the double bass is very low and heavy in some places, and then it kind of joins with the soprano for the text sections, using the double bass harmonics to, you know, have a similar kind of sound that joins with the soprano.